Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The husband asked his wife directly about the infidelity, and here's what she said: today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. My mind flew away, my thoughts raced many years and miles ahead. In my thoughts, I saw a man smiling at me. He had a shaved head and a thick beard. The most magical thing in this daydream was the feeling of love emanating from him. His eyes glowed. I remember reading things like this when I was a girl, but here in this dream, I finally understood it. The smile on his face and those glowing eyes were his reaction to me. This man loved me more than anything in the world. He loves me, I said, out of place. I don't know what it is about love, but I'm definitely good in bed. He snorted. The sound of his voice brought me out of my daytime sleep and back to reality. I looked up and saw a big sweaty guy who, oh my God, I couldn't remember. Sweat poured out like buckets while he was having intimate with me. God, how she got herself into this, said another man. I'm next. As I looked around at the row of men waiting in line and some women waiting for other men and vice versa, I had an epiphany. Hey, don't you think the guy who brought her should get his chance too? Said the skinny guy who sat next to me, watching the other one sleep with me. There was not a shadow of anger on his face. He wasn't jealous at all. He just wanted his turn. He was busy with other women here. After all, that was the point of privacy parties. The guy above me noticed Brian next to me and realized that Brian and I had come together. The thought of being intimate with a woman in front of her man turned him on greatly. Suddenly, I pushed the man away from me. Hey, he screamed, falling when I pushed him. If you want to have intimate with your old man, just say so, but you don't have to dump me to get to him, he shouted. I thought the point of joining a club was variety, to add a little spice. You could sleep with each other every night, but that's not what we come here for. He got up and left. Somehow, the lesson he was trying to convey was less compelling coming from the mouth of a man. I couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into tears. He looked at me and stopped. What's happened? He asked. Can we leave? I asked. He looked at me like I was crazy. Oh, Alex, he said as if his best friend had died. We haven't been here that long. It's easy for women to make friends, especially when they look like you. Men need more time. I was really upset, and he didn't care. Listen, Brian, if you take me home, I will have intimate with you how you want, as much as you want, I said. He looked at me as if weighing his options. Perhaps the thought of slept with me was so familiar that it no longer seemed like a special event. Okay, he said finally. I should probably check on Ellie. A few minutes later, we were dressed and heading out, leaving behind a group of irritated guys who were hoping to get a piece before I left. It didn't bother me because there were plenty of other women in the club. What's happened? He asked. What's with these tears? I don't know, I lied as the tears started flowing again. I sat in the passenger seat of his truck, and he sat on the other side. After he turned the key and started the engine, he looked at me with concern on his face. We're still going to slept, right? He asked, showing where his interest really lay. We went to his house as usual. He called the nurse who cared for his wife 2 days a week and told her she could go home. Mina Harker was an elderly woman who had been a nurse for 23 years. As much as she loved her patients, she loved her family, so the opportunity to leave early was great for her. As we watched her leave, I looked at the bed and, for the first time in years, tried to see if there was anything left of the beautiful young woman Brian, Dale, and I knew. The sight of her lying in bed became another reason for the burning of emotions in my heart. Okay, it's okay, Brian said. In a couple of minutes, she'll fall asleep and stay asleep for hours. Sometimes I really can't tell if she's asleep or not. He took my hand and pulled me into the guest room. One of the things I realized was that even after all the years we'd known each other and the 3 years we had slept, I didn't really know him. It seemed to me that I was seeing him for the first time, and I didn't like him. We started having intercourse. Brian didn't care about me. The only one he loved less was the shell of the woman he married. It hurt like hell, but I deserved it. I didn't enjoy intimacy. In a strange way, I liked that I didn't like it. In my mind, I was paying the price. I want to go home, I said. I'll give you a ride around the block once he began. We're already done, I said, and by home, I mean our hometown. He just looked at me with his mouth open. Okay, Alex, he said. What is this anyway? Brian, I made a mistake, I sobbed. I made a really big damn mistake. I don't know why it took me 3 years to realize this, but I don't belong here. I think I ruined my life. He just looked at me, and I could see the gears turning in his head. Alex, you're just feeling a little down, he said. You'll get over it. You always have. Besides, we really can't go home. They practically ran us out of town on the railroad. They might have done it if we hadn't left before anyone found out what we were doing. Brian, it's been 3 years, I said. They survived it. You mean he lived through it, didn't he? He asked. Or at least that's what you hope. That's what it's all about. Brian, I'm sorry, but, I began. Alex, you were always supposed to be mine, you know that, he said sharply. We just made some bad choices. And he's so damn selfish. He never learned to share, that's all. You just asked for me, his best friend and yours, one little thing. He stopped talking and just looked at me angrily. He treated you like property. He always tried to stop you from doing what you wanted to do. Brian, he loves me. He didn't want me to do anything with other guys because he was jealous. He probably wanted to be the only man in my life, I said. Brian said he didn't want you to talk to Della or Elaine either. Della and Elaine were the 2 biggest available girls in town, I said. Look how it turned out. Della moved to Vegas, and her daughter is ashamed of her. She's an illegally available girl working on the strip. There are ways to be a legal easy access girl in Nevada, but she chooses to risk arrest by selling her heel in hotels and casinos. Elaine tried to hook up with the wrong guy at one of the cheap motels off the highway and was beaten to death. Her poor husband never recovered, they say. So Dale wanting to keep me away from those 2 makes sense. He just loves me and wants the best for me. Me too, he said sharply. Or have you forgotten? We met on the same day. We both wanted you. You just made the wrong choice when you chose him. Brian, it's time to tell the truth, I said. You keep throwing it in my face, but I never chose Dale. I loved you both. I really couldn't choose between you. You saved me the trouble when the Miller sisters moved to town for college. You went after both Ellie and Arlene. Those 2 didn't fight over boys, and Ellie loved you very much. She had longer hair than me, she had big breasts, and she was willing to do whatever was needed to win you over. You forgot about me like yesterday's news. Dale got me by default. I don't know how things would have ended between the 3 of us. In many ways, I hoped we would have just become a threesome like those people in that movie Savages. You both could have remained best friends, and both of you would have loved me. He would never do that, Brian said sadly. He was the most generous man I ever knew, but he just didn't know how to share. He would buy you lunch if you had no money or give you his, but he wouldn't share it with you. I remember him buying or doing things for you over the years, I said. Remember when you lost your job? He got you a job at the company where you worked. Remember when Ellie kicked you out for cheating? He let you move in with us and live with us for a few months until Ellie took you back, and we never charged you rent. And how did you, his best friend, repay him? You kept trying to get me into bed every time he was away. Even as I spoke these words, I had not thought or spoken about these times for over 10 years. I probably blocked them out in my mind so as not to think badly of Brian. Maybe I was the most selfish of us. Maybe we were all just human. We all had our flaws, but I was beginning to see Brian's flaws much more clearly. I started seeing mine too. They say the best way to see things is in the mirror. What is this phrase that is printed on the rearview mirrors of cars? Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Now I saw everything so clearly, and I realized that I had made a mistake. Brian is really selfish and always needs things his way. He's like a spoiled child. He always wants the best and biggest piece of cake. I remember when we were kids, if he and Dale both bought toy planes, Brian would always insist that his plane was better. But he was careless. Brian always crashed his plane into a tree or into the ground. When he destroyed his plane, he always wanted Dale to trade or share with him. He always used the same excuse: "You have many planes." I only had one. And it was true. Dale always took care of his things. I don't know why I haven't seen this before. Objects in the mirror. Probably it wasn't just me. "Brian," I said, "you gave a lot of signals too." "Alex, I was scared and lonely, and other than you letting me touch your big heel to tease me, nothing really happened." I thought about this too, and it sent me even deeper into depression. "I don't care, Brian. I'm going home this week with or without you," I said. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was somewhere between curiosity and anger. "Brian, it's been 3 years," I said. "Perhaps he forgave us. Have you ever found another friend like him since then? You always said that he was a better brother to you than your real brother. Isn't that worth the risk? Okay, I'll ask my niece to babysit her aunt for one weekend. Who knows, if all goes well, maybe we can start going home once a month or so." Poor Brian, I didn't even tell him that if everything went well, I wouldn't come back. Most of all, I knew I was stupid. I also knew I didn't deserve a chance to make things right. I didn't deserve forgiveness, but more than anything, I wanted him. I prayed about it. I hoped so. I had dreams of my husband forgiving me, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. When I thought about what I wanted my life to be like when I turned 50, I was nowhere. I dreamed of sitting on the porch of a cabin in front of a lake with a man who worshipped me. I saw barbecues and grandchildren running around that I could spoil. I saw us traveling and sightseeing together. I saw it all. I think the most important thing that I miss most in my life right now is love. A few years ago, there was obviously something wrong with me. I see it now, but I didn't see it then. Call it a midlife crisis, call it menopause or empty nest syndrome, call it extreme stupidity or any of the other 3 million names we use when a woman makes a truly stupid choice. My greatest hope is that it is not too late to fix this. I have nothing to lose by trying. What's the worst that could happen? I can try to convince Dale to forgive me and take me back, and he might say no. Then I will be unhappy, but I'm already miserable, so how much worse can it get? Okay, it could be a lot worse. I'm not happy right now, but at least I have hope, at least I have something to dream about that makes my misery bearable. I left the motel room for 2 reasons. The first is to find something to eat. I walked through the aisles of a huge new supermarket that wasn't here when I lived in this city. The second reason I left the room was to get away from Brian. He tried to turn this trip home into another adventure. He used any excuse or any situation to add newness to a situation that had gone on for too long. It's really ironic that I ended up with Brian initially because I was bored with regular marital intimacy. I wanted excitement and passion in the bedroom, but after we tried almost everything there was to try, I found myself more bored than ever. In fact, I craved the one thing that was missing from all this intimacy: feeling. Feeling that what was happening was more than just letting some idiot who doesn't even know or want to know my real name be intimate with me until I pass out. Sometimes I hated Brian for talking me into this. Now that it's too late to undo some of the things said and done, I realize that Brian did all of this for his own selfish reasons. It's the same old story. He crashed his plane, and now he wants Dale's plane. He brushed me off for Ellie until she got sick, then he suddenly decided that he needed to share me with Dale. The only thing that was different this time was that this time, Dale said no. That alone should have told me something. Dale is not like that. He's usually willing to do anything to help anyone, especially Brian. It took me too long to realize that Dale loved me too much to ever share me. It took me too long to realize that, like Brian, I was trying to have my cake and eat it too. I just hoped that enough time had passed for Dale to at least talk to me. And if Dale talks, maybe my daughter Karen will too. I was thrown out of my thoughts by a blow. The car I picked up when I entered the store, just because it felt right, crashed into another woman's cart. Her elfin face immediately broke into a smile. "Sorry, I wasn't really watching where I was going," she said. "Me too," I replied. "I have so much to take in that I don't know where to start." "I don't even know what I want," I added. She was smaller than me, wearing yoga pants and had the figure to make them look good on her. Her breasts jutted out from her rib cage, and while they weren't overly large, they had enough perk to satisfy any man. Her round little butt and curved hips made her yoga pants almost obscene, but what most people would probably notice first is the explosion of red curls that fall almost to her waist. Only slight wrinkles around the eyes could give a hint about her possible age. She could be anywhere from her late 20s to my age and probably attracted men of both age groups. "Are you having a special dinner?" she asked. "What I really want is to just sit down and talk to my husband and daughter," I said. "That would be the most special thing possible. I don't really need much to make things special." "You are ahead of me," she said. "I wasted years on a man who wasn't worth half the tears I shed for him. He always told me how much he loved me and how much he liked me. Then he'd go away and spend his entire salary on alcohol or get caught cheating with another woman. The smartest thing I ever did was refuse to marry him. But now I live with a man who I would marry in a heartbeat, yet he never mentions it because he got burned badly once. Today I met his adult daughter, who will compare everything I do to her holy mother. I don't stand a chance. The only thing I can do is try to make everything as pleasant as possible and not give her a reason to dislike me." "Damn, this is terrible," I said. "Tell me about it," she smiled, but I can't say I blame her. "It must be hard to see your father with another woman. I guess it's just human nature to want to break them up. I just have to not do something stupid enough to give her an excuse." As we walked down the store aisles next to each other, we became friends of sorts. We exchanged ideas about what to cook, holidays, and men back and forth. When it was time to part ways, I gave her my phone number so she could call me to talk. Since I was seriously considering moving back to the city, it would be good to start with a new friend. The problem started when we left the store. I noticed Brian walking towards me, but he didn't seem interested in me at all. His gaze was drawn to Annie's rapidly retreating figure. I recognized that look. "Who was it?" he asked, coming up to me. I thought about it, realizing how obvious it was. "Just a new friend," I said carefully. "New friends are always useful," he muttered. "Do you have a way to contact her?" "Why is this important to you?" I asked sharply. "Are you tired of me already?" "Oh, Alex, don't act like you don't understand the rules of the game. This woman is not a threat to us. It will just been intimate." "Brian, do you realize how stupid this sounds?" I asked. "Remember what you told Dale? You told him that what was going on between us didn't threaten my marriage because it was just lovemaking. But Dale didn't see it the same way, and that's why you dragged me back to this small town to try to appease him," he said sharply. "We didn't do anything wrong. He's selfish. He acted like he owned you and didn't want to share. We shouldn't have crawled back here. He should have crawled to us. We're right. He's wrong." For the first time, I realized that Brian really didn't understand what was going on. He still saw things through the eyes of a spoiled 8-year-old. "But I'll make you a deal," he chuckled. When I looked at his smiling face, I felt a premonition of trouble. I was sure he would want me to do something that I wasn't comfortable with. "You'll call your new friend and convince her to have fun with us," he said. "I'll go and talk to Dale, try to work things out. I'll do whatever it takes to get him to sit down and talk to us." "You go first," I said, not trusting him. "After we talk to Dale, I'll call Annie." "Agreed," he exclaimed loudly. As we headed back to the motel, I felt the anxiety return. I also felt guilty. I sold Annie for a chance to return to my husband. I knew it was wrong, but I would do it without the slightest hesitation. If I had to choose between hurting a woman who had never hurt me and even the slightest chance of just talking to Dale, Annie would lose every time. "I'll go now," he said. "Stay on the phone. I'll probably call you soon with good news." When he left the motel room, my feelings of anxiety disappeared. They were replaced by both a feeling of jubilation and anxiety. 3 years have passed since I last saw him. Did he still look the same? I gained 20 pounds. Will he love me the same way I love him? Will he be ready to leave the past behind and start anew? I was too excited to do anything. If we actually talked, I would be willing to swear to him that if he forgives me, I will become the perfect wife for him again. I would swear on my life that no other man would touch me again for the rest of my days. I rushed to the bathroom to take a bath and get ready. I needed to look my best. I wanted Dale to see me and take me back. I took a long bath and thought about all the good times we had together and the things we talked about. We were the perfect family. But even then, even before everything blew up, when my daughter left the nest, I felt like something was missing. Perhaps I was missing the excitement of having these two guys compete for me. I think deep down, I wanted to experience that excitement again, but it all went horribly wrong. I lost track of time sitting in the bathroom, thinking about my past. I thought about what I had done wrong and how I would fix it if I had the chance. I thought about what I wanted from life and how I wanted my life to be from now on. I realized that although there was no longer a competition between the two men, the winner was already obvious, and I had chosen the wrong one. If I had a chance to correct my mistake, I would take it without hesitation. The objects in my mirror seemed closer and closer. I could almost touch them. I was about to get out of the bath when my phone rang. I picked up the phone and heard my daughter's voice. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Are you enjoying the holidays?" "I'm more nervous than you can imagine," I replied. "Me too," she said excitedly. "Maybe we should meet and talk about this," I suggested. She laughed at this. "That's easy to say when you're almost 800 miles away," she laughed. "I'm not sure how I'd feel if you were closer." "Karen, I'm in town, honey," I said excitedly. I swear I heard cicadas in the sudden silence on the phone. "Karen?" Karen," I said. "Are you still with me?" "Mom, why are you here?" she asked. From the sound of her voice, it seemed like my visit was the worst thing in the world. I felt like my 400-pound buck-toothed aunt showed up to a beauty pageant in a thong. But then, to save me from the awkwardness, the call-waiting tone sounded. "Karen, I have another call," I said. I was amazed at the tension between us. "Is this Alex Evans?" asked the voice. "Who is asking?" I answered. "My name is Clara Barton. I am a nurse at the local hospital, and we had a man admitted this afternoon. He is in poor condition and has asked us to contact you. His name is Brian Jones." "What happened to him?" I asked. "Are you his wife?" she asked. "Not really," I replied. "Then I can't give you complete information," she replied sharply, "but you should probably come here. He's going into surgery soon." Brian, everything was going as well as possible. As usual, I got the best part of the deal. I didn't understand why my luck never ran out. I guess, as they say, good things happen to good people, but we have to admit that this expression is not always true for everyone. If you want to be successful, you must be willing to put yourself out there and ask for what you want. In some cases, you need to reach out and grab what you want. Most people are simply not willing to put in the effort. Most people are simply afraid to take risks for fear of offending someone. I, on the other hand, am not like that. I really can't care enough to even partially hurt someone's sensitive feelings. Other people's sense of morality, their idea of justice, and their manners don't even rank on my radar. If I had a moral code, it would be that of the necromongers from Vin Diesel's The Chronicles of Riddick. Necromongers believe that you keep what you kill, and I believe that too. It's never harmed me so far in life, so why change? In fact, for most of my life, it has kept me happy, full, and settled. When my best friend Dale and I played together as children, I learned a lot about people. If I broke my toys, I would just whine and frown until he shared his or gave me his. Dale, like most people, didn't want to see his best friend unhappy, so he gave in every time, every damn time. The person had to be related to Mother Teresa. I'm telling you, the boy was supposed to be a saint. If it were me, I'd let my little fifth point scream and cry all day. I would give him a lecture on the balance of water in the human body. I would look deep into his little eyes and say, "The more you cry, the less you pee," and that would be the end of it. But not Dale. Over time, it got to the point where my toys were for learning from mistakes and Dale's toys were for general use. As we grew older, this continued sharing manifested itself in other ways, and this was especially noticeable when it came to Alex. In high school, we did everything together. We even went to prom together. I had her first dance and Dale had her last. We all turned 18 a few months after that. Talking to Dale like the best guys do, I realized that we looked at Alex differently. Dale put her on a pedestal, but to me, she was just a girl. Dale took a job between high school and college, so he worked during the day most of the summer. This helped Alex and me spend time together. Most of the time Dale was working, as usual, I took the opportunity and got her cherry. She made me swear that I would never tell Dale because she didn't want him to get hurt. Actually, I think she just liked to put the two of us against each other, and she knew that if Dale found out about this, he would resign. He would refuse to have anything further to do with her because he would think there was something special going on between the two of us. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Dale always thought Alex was special. I just saw her as someone I could sleep with. She looked good and fit well, but nothing special. Most guys seem to have an innate idea of what kind of girls we can get. So one afternoon while poor Dale was slaving away doing shitty jobs at the local home improvement warehouse. After that, instead of seeing Alex as just a girl, she became something more. It became a practice. Once again, Alex was just Alex. She wasn't some hot girl or stunning girl, she was just training. I think that's when Alex started to realize what was going on. She realized that between the two of us, Dale treated her like a princess and I didn't care. It was already too late, but she interrupted me. But I met Ellie and her sister shortly after that, so it didn't matter. In any case, they looked better and were built better. Dale was only too happy to get together with Alex, and from what I gathered, she convinced him that he was her first. But I was sure that if I ever wanted her, Alex would still sleep with me. I liked to rub it in her face with the fact that I had something on her. I wasn't surprised when they got married a couple of years later. A couple of years after that, she became pregnant and gave birth to his child. They had a good, boring life. I visited them often. We were a big part of each other's lives as we always had been. I was Dale's best man, and he was mine at my wedding to Ellie. I am the godfather of their daughter, Karen. I've always been a bit cheeky, and Ellie kicked me out when she caught me cheating. Dale and Alex took me in for a couple of months until we figured things out. There was another time when I got really angry with my boss and quit my job. Dale helped me get a better job at the company where he worked. I stayed there for about a year and then left. My whole life was like tea and cakes until Ellie got sick. We had been married for over 20 years, and she was a good, if boring, wife, so I couldn't divorce her. Then I just went back to my old habits. I started thinking more and more about Alex. Sure, she was married to my best friend, but she was my first. I'm not going to lie, I cheated on Ellie a lot over the years. I got caught once. I saw this as a sign from life that I wasn't careful enough. It was not in my nature to accept her refusal. I was shocked, but that didn't stop me. I have always had several levels of approach to each problem. After apologizing to her for suggesting cheating on Dale, I began to tell her how hurt I was about Ellie's illness. Over the next few weeks, I kept telling her about how much we always shared when we were younger. At the same time, I began to hint at how boring it can be to do the same thing over and over again. I had already heard her tell some of the nurses when she came to see Ellie that she didn't know what to do since her daughter had left for college. After a few weeks, I just started talking about lovemaking parties. I made her think that Ellie and I were doing this and how it had revitalized our marriage. None of this was true, but I was pretty sure Ellie wouldn't wake up from her coma and call me a liar. To be honest, I didn't discover anything new. I was simply addressing the feelings of doubt and boredom that many women our age experience. I mixed it with memories of how exciting it was to have two men competing for her, which was exactly how she saw it. She fell for it as usual, with the only condition that she didn't want to hurt Dale. This is where my plan went awry. I was confident that I could manipulate Dale like I always had when we were young, but we weren't young anymore, and Dale wasn't acting the way I expected. He got mad. He saw with one glance that Alex understood what I was hinting at. "Is this something you're interested in too, honey?" he asked her. "Well, maybe we could try," she said. "Have you discussed this yet?" he asked her. "I guess so," she replied. "But for now, we were only talking, and I wasn't going to start without discussing it with you." "You're a grown woman, Alex," he said. "You can make your decisions without me. If you think things are getting a little boring between us, you have every right to try something new. but thanks for taking me into account." "So, we can do this?" she asked. "It's up to you," he replied. "I'll talk to Jim tomorrow morning." "Is this fast enough?" "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Jim Bajo is my lawyer," he said. "If she wants to be with you, our marriage is obviously over." "No, Dale," she said. "Dale, buddy, you're my best friend. I'm not in love with Alex. It's not about love, it's just love affair. It's purely physical." "He's right, honey," she said. "We're getting older, our daughter left home. It's time for us to explore some things." He turned and stared at her. "I have a great way for you to start researching," he said. "You won't be able to explore the world from the inside, so both of you leave my house." Alex started crying and reached out to him. "Okay, let's forget about it," she said. "I can't believe you're so selfish," I said. "My wife is dying, and you can't offer me some stress relief? What a friend you are." "After that, Dale, we don't have anything else to talk about," she told him. "Having love affair with Brian is." "You don't mean to have intimacy with Brian again?" he asked. We were both shocked. "What are you talking about, buddy?" I asked. "Brian, you were never my buddy," he snapped. "I played dumb for years, but I won't anymore." "But we never." Alex began. "Alex, I know you lied to me for years about how I was your first. I pretended to be stupid because I loved you very much. I wanted to be with you no matter the circumstances. I also know that Brian was your first choice, even though he didn't love you half as much as I did. But I tried harder and hoped that someday I would be number one in your heart. I also know that he molested you when we let him stay at our house many years ago. I'm actually not sure what happened then or not. That's why we had a difficult period. Then I didn't know if I could trust you." "Dale, I swear nothing happened," she said with tears in her eyes. I told him no. "But you didn't even bother to mention it to me, so that's strike two," he said. "I think maybe you just like the attention. Well, now you can get all the attention you need. This is the third strike. You're out. I don't want to see you both anymore." Then he turned and walked up the stairs. Alex tried to follow him, but he turned around, and his gaze stopped her in her tracks. Dale had shaved his head and grown a beard. He looked quite menacing, although he was actually quite kind. But that day, I was truly scared looking into his eyes. "I'm leaving on a business trip tomorrow," he said. "While I'm away, I expect you to take all your things from here." "Dale, you're overstepping your bounds," I said, shocked. "Listen, I just thought it would be like old times. I just wanted some fun." "Even the old days weren't this fun, Brian," he said. "As usual, you got what you wanted. You wanted to have intimacy with her, you won. She's yours now. Get out of here, because the next time I see you, I will hurt you both. Now go away." I didn't see Dale for 3 years after that, and to tell the truth, I missed him. I think if I had to choose, I'd choose him over Alex any day. I don't have close male friends, and as Alex mentioned, I didn't have anyone left to go fishing or watch football with. That's why I agreed to talk to him. I was sure Alex wanted to talk to him about their daughter Karen. Alex always talked about how she wished she could be closer to Karen. She thought Karen was stuck in the middle between her parents. Perhaps if Karen could see that her parents were getting along or at least being civil, she would forgive Alex too. I knew exactly where to find Dale. He was as predictable as the seasons. The day before the big town picnic, they had a car show in town. Dale would be there with his Mustang. I arrived in town with a smile on my face. If all went well, not only would I have my best friend back, but I would also have a chance to win a hot new girl. Alex should have kept her word and introduced me to this cute red-haired girl. If I could get into a relationship with the redhead, maybe Dale could get Alex back. I was already tired of her anyway, and her whining was starting to get on my nerves. As I walked through the exhibition area where the cars were on display, I saw some interesting cars. There were a lot of Mustangs in one section. I looked around but didn't see Dale. To one side, towards the center of the group, I saw a beautiful charcoal gray Shelby GT500 convertible with red trim. I never thought before that gray and red could go well together, but they worked. The car had larger Brembo brakes with red calipers, and the interior was made in red leather with gray trim. The compressor and everything under the hood were chrome-plated. As I admired the car, I noticed that its owner was looking at me. There was something familiar in his gaze, and I smiled. He stood up and walked towards me. Oh damn, I thought. I don't have time for another car guy to come up to me and talk about his damn car. This is one of the most annoying things about these shows. Every single one of these guys acts like you're as into cars as they are. I looked left and right and didn't see Dale's bald head or beard anywhere. I turned to the approaching man and realized that if I listened to him talk about the Mustang for a couple of minutes, I could ask him if he had seen Dale. When he came closer, I recognized him. He had shaved his beard and let his hair grow. The man quickly approaching me was my childhood best friend. "Hey, buddy," I said with a huge smile. I wanted to talk before I could finish my thought. Darkness fell. Alex. I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. I talked on the phone with my daughter. I was trying to understand her reaction to the sudden revelation that I was in town when I learned that I had to drop everything and go to this hospital because Brian apparently did something stupid and ended up in the hospital. I looked around and saw one person behind the nurse's counter. "I'm here because of Brian Jones," I told her. She quickly typed something on the computer next to her. She looked up at me with professional concern and said, "Second floor, or 3. He's still in surgery." She immediately went back to texting on her phone. I went to the second floor and received directions to the waiting room near the operating rooms. I sat down and started flipping through magazines, trying to decide if I should even wait. Dale could call me when he woke up from whatever happened to him. Meeting my husband was much more important to me than Dale's condition. I had been sitting there for about 20 minutes when she came in. She looked worried, the eternal smile disappeared. "And," I called her. She looked at me. "What brings you here? Are you visiting someone?" "Sort of," she replied. There was a strange tone in her voice. "What are you doing here?" "This idiot I came with is trying to ruin my plans," I said. My life couldn't have gotten any worse if I had planned for this. I hate that sometimes. "It's nothing yet," she said. "My darling is the kindest, most gentle, loving person I have ever known. And he's not bald with a beard, is he?" I asked. "No," she said, looking at me in surprise. "But he never spoke rudely to anyone until today. For some reason, he hit one guy and turned himself into the police." "Wow," I said. "Sounds like your sweetie's in trouble. I hope it's not too bad." The nurse came up to us. "Which one of you is here about Brian Jones?" she asked. "I am," we both said at the same time. "He just came out of surgery and should wake up any minute." "They're trying to wake him up because they want to rule out a concussion," the nurse said. "Concussion?" I said. "What happened to him?" My darling must have hit him," and said. "That's why I'm here." "Somehow, I'm sure Brian instigated this himself," I said. "He sometimes, let's just say usually finds a way to annoy everyone. You know what, I'll take care of it. He won't file any lawsuits if that's what you're worried about. I'll take care of it." "Thank you very much," she said. "Don't worry," I said. "Friends should stick together." "Exactly," she said. Then the nurse returned. "He wants to see you now," she said. I grabbed Dan's elbow. "Come on, you can apologize for your boyfriend," I said. She nodded nervously. When we entered the room, there was one senior nurse with a computer on wheels. She looked at us and then wheeled the cart out of the room. "He can't talk," she said as she passed by. "Let him use this notepad to communicate until the painkillers kick in. After that, he'll be able to talk a little as long as he keeps his jaw still." Brian looked unhappy. He looked at me angrily, not seeing in behind me since the screen separating the beds in his semi-ward was closed. He tried to speak, then grabbed his jaw in obvious pain, letting out a groan of agony. He took a pen and angrily began to write something on a notepad. He then held it up so I could see it. I looked at his angry scribbles. "Waited for you for a long time," he wrote. "Maybe I shouldn't have come at all," I replied sharply. Maybe I should be with my daughter and my husband right now, just like I planned. You can't be grateful. You can't understand that your incident ruined all my plans for this weekend. Can you just think for once about someone other than yourself? He began to frantically write something on a notepad. My jaw is crushed. Enough victims. We can use this for your purposes, he wrote. I looked at him in bewilderment. I didn't understand at all what he was writing about. At that moment, Anne came out from behind the screen. Sorry, she said, but I really need to go. I just wanted to say that we're sorry about what happened. He's not usually like this. He was probably just in a bad mood. We'll do everything we can to help you. Then she turned and walked away. Even after she left, I noticed Brian sitting on the bed watching her walk away and her butt move. I hissed at him. No, he wrote. Her fifth point has a but. Why am I wasting my damn time on you? I muttered. Because we can achieve what we both want, he wrote. A malicious expression appeared on his face. We have nothing in common in our desires, I hissed angrily. Call her. Tell her that I will drop all charges in exchange for 2 meetings. I will talk to her while you talk to her boyfriend. If they agree, he will be released immediately. If not, let her rot in jail. Why are you doing it? I asked. 2 reasons. 1, so you'll leave me alone. 2, if he can win her being so boring, I'm sure I can charm her much better. Brian, you probably started this situation with her boyfriend, I said. He chuckled under his breath. He shook his head and began to write. I just approached him. He looked at me and hit me. Did he hit you once? I asked. He must have been very big or very evil, but I still wouldn't have anything to do with it. I'm doing this for you, you fool, he wrote. No thanks, I said. Anne is my friend. I won't help you get to her. He laughed again and suddenly my stomach turned over. Is your new friend more important than your heart? He wrote. I just looked at him like he was crazy. He lay in his bed and laughed at me. You will do this. You are just as evil and selfish as you think about me, he wrote. No way, I said. Her boyfriend is our old friend Dale, he wrote and started laughing. I almost lost consciousness. I turned around and left the room and the hospital. The objects in my rearview mirror were not only getting dangerously close, they were slamming into my butt, and Brian seemed to enjoy putting me in this situation by forcing me to choose between throwing a completely innocent woman into his clutches and losing the chance to get my family back. He acted in his usual style. I took out my mobile phone and dialed my daughter's number. Karen, why didn't you tell me? I asked. Tell you what? She asked. Why didn't you tell me that your father was dating someone? How serious is their relationship? I asked sharply. Mom, I didn't think that what was happening or happened with Dad was about you. It was a long time before I even started answering your calls, remember? Mom, you chose what happened between you. Dad was literally broken. You didn't behave like the mother I knew all my life. For a long time, Dad didn't leave the house at all. He even moved for a while and got a job at another company. I tried to keep in touch with him, but he was like a balloon from which all the air had been released. But I began. Shut up, Mom, she said sharply. Even in those times when it seemed to me that my heart was bleeding for Dad, I missed you too. But I didn't miss the woman who left her husband and daughter. I missed the woman who treated my abrasions and gave me peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. When I realized she was gone, I started talking to you because I thought you were the closest thing to who you were. So when I started talking to you, I made a couple of rules. I never forgave you for destroying our family. I just started over with you as a different person. Dad was never interested in what was going on in your life, so we never talked about you, and I never responded to your questions about him. I pretended I didn't know anything. That's why I never told you that he was back. I decided it wasn't any of your business. After all, you chose not to be with him. So when he brought into town, I've been talking to her on the phone for a year now, and it seems to me that I know her, and I like her. They came to the city for just a few days. They didn't even have time to unpack everything. But Mom, if you want to save our relationship, you need to leave it alone. Karen, your dad is in jail. I need your help to get him out of there, I said. What happened? She asked. Your Uncle Brian went to talk to your dad, and things. I started. That freak is not my uncle, she said sharply. I don't understand how you can even mention Dad in the same breath as that idiot. Mom, do you even have feelings? How the hell could you send the man who stole you from Dad to talk to him? That was incredibly stupid. Why did you want to hurt him again? I guess I didn't see it that way, I said. I just wanted. Why the hell do we always talk about what you want? She asked. Last time, you wanted another man, and you destroyed our family to get him. Now you feel guilty or something, or maybe you just wanted something else, so you sent the man Dad hates more than anything in the world to talk to him. It just doesn't make sense. Do you ever think about anyone other than yourself? Karen, I just want it. Mom, no one cares what you want, she said sharply. Karen, I'm not the villain here. Your uncle. I mean, Brian wants a chance with Anne and my daughters. The laughter almost tore my head off. Mom, you can forget about it, she said after she finished laughing. And would never do to Dad what you did. Brian doesn't stand a chance. She loves Dad too much. She would rather die first. I need to go. I need to call someone who can actually help Dad. Dale. The silence of my cell gave me time to think, but I couldn't understand why Brian approached me. My actions, of course, were completely wrong. I'm sorry I hurt Brian, but not that bad, I think. My mind was mixed up. I see Brian as two people. I see the boy I grew up with who was almost like a brother to me, and then I see a cunning, smiling scoundrel who wanted to share my wife with me. This is the one I wanted to hit. So when he approached me, the rage just took over. I haven't fought since I was a teenager. My thoughts about why I did this, whether it was just anger over betrayal or whether I still had feelings for Alex, were interrupted by the sound of the cell door opening. I saw Johnny Walker, our town sheriff, and one of his deputies, Greg Bennett. Johnny is an old friend of my family, and Greg is my brother-in-law. Both looked puzzled. Dale, why are you here? Walker asked. There is complete confusion here. I hit Brian, I said. Wow, Walker said. I heard that you crushed his jaw and knocked him down with one punch. I also heard that he hit the back of his head on the concrete, and the doctors are worried about a concussion. A sparkle flashed in his eyes. There was never a warm relationship between Johnny and Brian. So I gave up, I said, and caused me a lot of problems, he said. I've got people calling my office all over the place and calling the mayor to find out why you're under arrest. Everyone in town knows that this idiot is the one your wife ran off with. A little anger in a situation like this is probably justified. I can't say that I wouldn't have hit that scoundrel myself if I had seen him first and he hadn't run off with my Lulu. Besides, you're not a threat to society, so I don't see the point in keeping you locked up for the weekend. John, I would like nothing more than this, I said, but I don't want to get you in trouble. Brian has always been the one to start fights. I don't want him to go out and get a lawyer to sue you for letting me go. He shook his head. You see, that was always the difference between you two, Dale. You always thought about how your actions would affect others, but Brian only ever thought about himself. Maybe this time he'll get what he deserves. But I wasn't too worried about him. First, charges haven't been filed yet, and second, there probably won't be any for two reasons. First, because... Look, Dale, it's hard for me to say this, but I'll just say it straight. Don't hit me because I didn't start it. I'm just a messenger. Alex called. My insides twisted into not hearing her name. Johnny noticed this and waited until I calmed down enough to continue. She left her phone number, he said. I think she wants to offer you some kind of deal. As your friend, I would advise you to call her and listen to what she has to say. Consider this as some kind of redemption. But don't worry if this is just another of Brian's ploys. The mayor wants me to run them both out of town. As soon as Brian can get up, the nurse at the hospital assures me that he will be discharged by Sunday or the next day. Since Monday is a holiday, he won't be able to do anything in court until then. But how do I say the mayor wants these two to leave town on moral grounds? This is a small town, and we take morals seriously. We also take care of our own. A few minutes later, I left the cell and headed back to the fairgrounds. Before I had walked a block, I heard the hum of a powerful car engine. A few seconds later, my Mustang pulled up next to me, and then hugged me without seeming to even wait for the car to come to a complete stop. She left the door open and the car in the middle of the street. When we got into the car, she took my hand, which made it difficult for me to change gears, but I understood she was a little scared by everything that happened and didn't want to let me go. For a second, we drove home, and she kissed me, and then rushed to get everything ready for Karen and Greg's visit. I took out my iPhone and called the number Johnny gave me. Her voice didn't sound as vibrant as it always did when we were together, but the timbre was the same. "Hello," she said. "What do you and that goof want, Alexandra?" I asked. "Dale, this is not what I want," I said. "It's all Brian. He wants to offer you a deal so you don't sue him." I started to be afraid. I didn't want him to blame it on me and be less inclined to talk to me. He snorted. I know my husband. From his reaction, I realized that he didn't need any deals from us. "What's the deal?" he asked. "Talk," I said. "That's the real reason I came back to town. He should have asked you to sit down and talk to me, not pick a fight with you. I just wanted to talk for a few minutes, just that." And while we're talking, Dale could have talked to and Annie's out, he said sharply, "If that goof even looks at her, I'll hit him even harder. I'd rather go to jail than let him say hello to her." He struck me with the determination in his voice. "I don't need any deals from Brian, but to end this once and for all, I will offer you one. Let's do this the way it started, the way our marriage ended, the way it always was. The three of us will sit down and talk together before you leave town. Take it or leave it, but I don't know when Brian and I will leave town," I said. "It could take weeks. I don't want to wait that long. We're having a barbecue with Karen and Greg tonight," he said. "There's a big town picnic tomorrow. Monday is quite a holiday. I'm guessing it's supposed to be family time, although they'll still be celebrating in town if all goes well. This afternoon, I'm sure Annie and Karen will probably get us together. Monday too. But how about the three of us meet on Monday morning before you leave, Dale?" "Honey, I can't speak for Brian, but I was probably determined, or at least hoping, to stay," I said. He snorted again. "Do you want to meet or not?" he asked. "We'll take her," I said, knowing that Brian would be angry that he wouldn't get a chance within. "Dale, is there any chance I could come and see Karen?" Alexandra asked. "If Karen wants to see you, I don't mind. But as for you coming to my house today, that won't happen," he said. "So I'll see you at 9 a.m. Monday in Brian's room at the hospital, or we'll meet at the music pavilion in the park if he gets released early." He hung up. If I imagine an opportunity for us to talk and try to rekindle what we had, it didn't happen. He still seemed to hold a grudge against both Brian and me. A tear slowly rolled down my cheek as I realized that my plans might not come true. "So, how did it go?" Brian asked from the bed. Over the past few hours, the pain in his jaw had lessened to the point where moving his head no longer hurt. This may have been due to the fact that he was on intravenous pain medication. In any case, he was able to speak through his teeth, although his jaws remained fixed for the next 6 weeks. "So, when is my little red-haired goddess coming?" he asked. "She won't come," I said without emotion. Dale's exact words were, "He'll hit you even harder if you even look at her." I saw a hint of fear in his eyes when I told him this. "We're getting a meeting of sorts," I said, "but the meeting will be between the three of us." "That actually makes sense," he said through gritted teeth. "It's kind of poetic, coming full circle or starting a circle again. If I know Dale, he'll keep her out of the way while we discuss the possibility of you getting back together. Remember how he used to hide his new toys while he tried to negotiate a trade with me from your old ones?" I smiled, remembering this. "But if it's true, why does he still seem so angry?" I asked. "Oh, that's a good sign," he said through gritted teeth. "It means he still has strong emotions for you. He wants you back. Think about it, if you were truly happy with the redhead, he wouldn't care what happens to you and me. He wouldn't be angry enough to hit me. I see a future for us three." "I don't think so, Brian," I told him. I want to believe that Dale wants me back, but even if that's the case, he's too principled for something underhanded. I just wish I didn't have to wait 2 days to talk to him, I sighed. And I wish he'd let me come to the house. Damn it, go anyway, he said. You know he does want you around. The redhead bothers him because he doesn't want to compare you to. What do you mean? I asked. Damn, Alex, were you married to him all these years, or was I? He asked. Dale always makes decisions with his heart. A man is governed by feelings. He somehow stumbled upon a much more attractive woman. She's prettier than you and better built. My breasts are bigger than hers, I said. And your belly is bigger too, he remarked sharply. It's all a matter of proportions. In any case, Dale doesn't care about that. What will matter to him is that you've lived together for so many years, you have a child together, and you're still married. Plus, you were his first love. He's weak on things like that. Once you two get back together, I'll help the redhead get over the breakup, and I'll still sleep with you from time to time. It's the best of both worlds. Okay, go to the barbecue. He'll be mad, but your daughter will be happy to see you, his words came out as he was falling asleep. I followed his advice. I also took his car. I drove his 8-year-old Chevy around town to our old neighborhood. I decided to stop and buy a bottle of wine and maybe some beer so I wouldn't come up empty-handed. When I walked into the store, which was about 3 blocks from the house where I once lived with Dale and our daughter, I felt good. It was like coming home. There were so many familiar places and things that I had forgotten about, that coming back reminded me of them. I knew exactly where the beer was, and I knew that the wine display was in another part of the store. As I looked at the wines, something told me to look up. As I did this, I noticed several pairs of eyes staring at me. I waved, but they didn't answer. One of the women who was looking at me walked up to the counter and said something to the woman behind the counter, and then walked away. A few minutes later, one of the boys who was stocking the shelves came up to me. "Can I help you with anything, ma'am?" he asked. "No, I'm just looking for the right bottle of wine," I said. He looked nervous and glanced around. "Maybe I can help you find it faster," he said. He looked at me as if he was pleading. I suddenly got the message. They wanted me to leave the store as soon as possible. As I placed my purchases on the counter, I sighed loudly. I used to live around here. I started talking to another boy who was working the cash register, while a group of women my age just watched. When I lived here, people were kinder to strangers. "We are kind to strangers," one of the women whispered. "She's not a stranger," whispered another. "She used to live around here," said another. "Yes," added another. "But even when she lived here, we didn't really like her." "Yes," said another. "But even when she lived here, we didn't like .. I paid for my drinks and hurried out of the store, almost in tears. I drove the rest of the way home without looking at anything or anyone passing by. Returning to the city may have been more difficult than I thought, but if I could get Dale back, nothing these gossips could do would make me leave. I calmed my nerves as I parked in front of the house. I parallel parked because there were already 3 cars in the driveway, none of which I recognized. With a simple inference, I could guess to whom they belonged. The car closest to the garage was a beautiful charcoal gray Mustang with red trim. This, without a shadow of a doubt, was Dale's last Mustang. The car was obviously some kind of special edition. She looked like she was on steroids. Just behind her was a charcoal gray Ford Fusion with pink dance shoes hanging from the mirror. This must have been Anne's car. The last car was an old SUV. I assumed the SUV must have belonged to Karen and her husband. As I walked toward the house, I heard quiet voices talking and laughing. I noticed seedlings that had just been purchased, they hadn't been planted yet. There were seedlings of all kinds of flowers. I suspected Anne had bought them. She had already started making changes to my house. I heard my daughter's voice laughing. I couldn't resist peeking through the gap in the fence to see what was going on. While I watched, I saw 2 couples. A young man, apparently my brother-in-law, whom I had never met, was trying to light the grill. The coals wouldn't light, and my daughter found it funny. She hugged Anne and pointed to something her husband couldn't see. Her father took a picture of his son-in-law failing to light the fire. Dale looked different. He had hair and no beard. He looked much younger than in our last days together. He and Ann were inseparable. They constantly touched each other and reached out to each other. I wasn't just watching two couples, I was watching the family I was meant to be a part of. Both my husband and my daughter seemed to have moved on with their lives without me. I expected that I would have to fight for my husband with Ann, but the fact that she took my daughter was below the belt. I resolutely pressed the call button. Ann opened the door a few minutes later, and the smile on her face immediately disappeared as soon as she saw me. She stood there, not knowing what to say. "I thought we could be friends," she said slowly. I didn't know that you. I was the woman you were trying to replace. You're a homewrecker." I screamed. "Mom, what the hell is wrong with you?" my daughter screamed. She stood in front of Ann, almost protectively. "Why are you yelling at Ann in her own home?" She spent the whole day telling me how sorry she was that everything turned out this way and how sweet you were, Karen. I just saw you laughing and having fun. It looked like you were close, not like she was just someone Dad just met. Mom, and I have known each other for over a year. We started talking on the phone as soon as she and Dad met. She got me through a lot of tough times that you can't even imagine. She's the one who suggested I start taking your calls and not just ignore them. She's the one who told me that no matter what happens between you and Daddy, you are my mother and will always be. She convinced me that I need to find a place for both of you in my life. And as for you spying on us, if you had just come to the door and asked, maybe we would have let you in." I understood what she meant when she said we looked close. I mean, we look like a family, Mom. You were part of this family, but you chose to leave us. You can't blame anyone but yourself. You're just as manipulative and selfish as Brian, so don't blame him for your mistakes. Now, bye." I could tell my daughter was angry with me when she started to slam the door. And held her back. "Alex, I really didn't plan anything," she said softly. "There's a place for both of us in Karen's life, and Dale is free to make his choice. I just want him to be happy. I understand that you've been together for years, so if he chooses you, I'll just leave. But if he chooses me, I promise you that you will still be welcomed as a friend. I will never try to exclude you." "Goodbye, Mom," Karen said, closing the door. When I left the house, I couldn't help but cry. When I thought about how Ann reacted to the way I treated her, I realized that my daughter was right. 2 long days later, I was walking to the hospital when I heard a roar. I looked up to see Ann driving away in Dale's Mustang, which looked like it was on steroids. Her red hair was pulled back, and she wore sunglasses. Despite her small figure, she looked quite comfortable in the big car. She shifted gears deftly, as if she had done it many times before. I rushed into the hospital and headed to the elevators. If Ann had already brought Dale, he might already be talking to Brian. I didn't trust Brian not to try to make me feel guilty for everything that happened, so I hurried to the room. Unfortunately, when I got to the room, Dale was already sitting in the chair next to Brian's bed. The nurse had just brought Brian breakfast, soup and juice. Brian would not be able to eat solid food until the wires from his jaw were removed. I heard Brian trying to use that persuasive tone that seemed so effective when he wanted to get his way. Suddenly, in the middle of Brian's speech, Dale stood up and spat in his soup. He then slowly took the glass of juice and poured it on Brian. "Brian, you're a complete zero," he said. "But you've always been like this. I put up with it for years because I thought we were friends. Now that I know that we're not friends and never have been, I have no reason to listen to your nonsense. I also heard that Johnny told you to leave town as soon as you get out, and Brian, next time I see you, I won't be so nice." He turned and walked straight towards me. "You're late," he said. "This way." We took the elevator down. He directed me to a seat in one of the street cafes on the first floor of the hospital. As soon as we sat down, the waitress came over. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. "We probably won't be here long enough to eat," he said. She turned to another table. "Now, you have the floor," he said. His voice was a mixture of curiosity and humility. There was a fire in his eyes that I never thought I would see again. "The object in my rearview mirror is home," I said. I felt like I was very close to getting what I always wanted. I want us to be a family again, I said. I want this more than anything in the world. I want us to start over. I love you, Dale. I never knew how much until you left. And I know that you love me too. You've never loved anyone the way you loved me. I want to be Anne's friend too. She's a good woman. She deserves to be part of our family. We'll find someone for her. He raised his hand. I got a good look at him for the first time. He gave up his shaved head. His hair was cut short. It wasn't a clipper cut, but it wasn't much longer either. There was at least as much gray in his hair as there was black, perhaps even more salt than pepper. There was no beard either, and he looked much, much better without it. I think I fell in love with him all over again. Suddenly, everything fell into place. My heart began to pound as I realized that I had lost him a long time ago. Every little thing should have told me. The first was the car. Dale always drove Mustangs. Over the years, he never let me drive them. Apparently, he loved and more than he ever loved me. The second clue also concerned the car. If he was going to choose me, he would never have let her drive away in that car. By giving her the car, he made it clear that they would stay together after our conversation and in the future. The most insidious clue was hidden. As soon as I saw this car, I started thinking about the color scheme. The two colors seemed incongruous, but they suited each other so well. Who could combine charcoal gray and red? It was so obvious now. He painted that car the color of their hair. Dale, when you drive around in your car and sometimes when you lie in bed at night, you think about me. You're wondering where we went wrong and why we didn't succeed, I said. You think about me because you still love me. I am the most important part of your life, and no matter how sweet she may be, she will never be me. She's just a bandage on the deep wound that I left in your heart. You can't walk away from me because I'm that object in your rearview mirror that you see everywhere. Do you know why you almost killed your best friend? It was me, Dale. You were so angry at him for taking me from you that you transferred all your anger into one blow. He didn't stand a chance. And you will always see me in the rearview mirror because I have always been closest to your heart, just like the mirrors on your fancy car say, objects in the mirror are closer than they seem. This means that I'm probably not only close to your heart, I'm still in it. I came here more out of curiosity than for any other reason, he said. I guess I was hoping that you would regret leaving us. I was wondering if you realized that choosing intimacy over family would someday make you want to apologize. I think you're more like Brian than I thought. Maybe you always belonged to each other. I'm not like him. I screamed. We are objects in the mirror, Dale. Look in the mirror. I probably expected it to be difficult, he said, laughing, but actually, it's not. You're just a burnout old who wants another chance she doesn't deserve. Look in the mirror, damn it, I said. And is not in your mirror. Of course she's not, he laughed. Has Ellie already left? Maybe you should marry Brian when she dies. I can't marry Brian, and I wouldn't want to, even if I could. You and I are still married, so you can't marry Anne. We're still married, objects in the mirror, Dale. I divorced you for abandonment more than a year ago, he said. I'll marry Anne as soon as I can take her to church. Karen is pregnant. And will become a grandmother. They laughed about it when you overheard us. And for God's sake, stop raving about the objects in the mirror. I'm willing to admit that you and Brian are objects in my mirror, but maybe you should take a look at my mirrors when you leave town and my damn life. Goodbye, Alex. I was shocked. He really was leaving me. I tried my best to get him back, and he laughed at me. He didn't even consider taking me back. He also divorced me without my knowledge. I never thought this was possible, abandonment. I didn't abandon him, did I? I thought I was just leaving until he calmed down. The biggest blow came from my daughter. Karen didn't even consider it necessary to tell me that she was going to have a baby. Perhaps she was still angry about that day. As I watched the man I loved and gave away leave, I heard a roar. And appeared out of nowhere, driving the menacing machine as if it was made for it. She locked the car and ran out to throw herself into Dale's arms. They obviously planned the meeting in advance because they walked along the street holding hands and talking. I should have left with him, but I shouldn't have left him. I was always sure that I could return to him whenever I wanted. As they left, my curiosity got the better of me. I walked up to the car. I'd seen a Mustang or two in my life, mostly Dale's cars over the years, but I knew what to expect. This car was different. Almost every detail of the car had been changed, almost nothing on it was standard. I looked at the mirror and saw familiar letters there, but even that was different. I understood this instantly. Dale didn't want me anymore because, unlike me, he only looked forward. Dale wasn't stuck in the past like I was. My time with Dale was the best part of my life. He looked to the future. The message on his mirrors told me so. Instead of objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, they said, objects in the mirror lose. What do you think of our story today? I think that my husband acted like a mature person, and every equate person would do the same. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next video.